Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Downing, and I'll be teaching your composition class this semester. Today, I'd like to cover the essential writings in the class and what my thought process is on those. So let's dive in. I'm going to share my screen, and there we go. Okay. So essential writings, I'll try to move through this as quickly as possible, but to show you what I'm trying to cover, it's about 2.5 pages. So take a breath, and here we go. KU requires 3,500 words for a writing intensive class. This is a writing intensive class. My goal is to help you get there as effectively and efficiently and as painlessly as possible. You must complete at least 5 writings. This is my rule. So 3,500 divided by 5 is 700. Therefore, if you want to write 5 700-word essays, that's the recipe. However, I am open to negotiation. So you can divide that 3,500 words up in certain ways. Hypothetically, then, 500-word essay to get started and get the feel for the form without having a lot of pressure. Number two, highlight this. You could then maybe get rolling and write 1,000-word essay. Beyond that, you could do a 700-word essay because that really is the sweet spot. If you get rolling again, you could do 1,000. And then if you're at the end of the semester and you're just trying to wrap up and you want to knock out 500, you could do that and be done. Now, I know this is 3,700 words, but I'm just trying to show you the flexible nature of it. If you go over the 3,500 words, that is fine, but I really don't want you to go much over that in terms of your finished product. Now, one of the things we'll talk about in this class is writing down. So for me, if I'm going to try to get a 500-word essay for submission, I'm probably going to write more words than that, maybe 700 or 800, and then boil it down. We'll talk more about that. Now, I know that there is fear about word generation. How am I going to generate this stuff? I'm going to encourage you to use your phones. So let me make sure that I've covered all this. I know this is 3,700 words. It is a possible scenario. Please note that if you write 1,000 words, I'll likely push you to trim it down to 800 or so, always squeezing out the juice. It makes for better writing, and that's what's known as writing down rather than writing up. And as soon as you hit the word count, ding, you're done. That's it's not the way professionals write. So your phones. Composing with your phone. I strongly encourage you to use your phones to compose. We will do an in-class exercise. I will ask you to encounter a few sources, whatever they may be. I'm going to throw a lot of Instagram videos at you to get us, because they're tight and we can engage in conversation without having to read, 1,000 words together all the time. So then I'm going to ask you to leave the classroom during this exercise and generate your thoughts into your phone. Then you'll email the draft to yourself and copy it to the Google folder as directed. We will be using Google folders. I'll talk all about that in class. There will be a folder. This will be for your in-class text generation. You will have a Google Doc in there, and then you will email that work to yourself and copy and paste it into that. And then we're going to see what we've generated. There are a number of ways to do it. You can open Docs on your phone. The way I've done it for years is I just go to my Gmail and then I press compose, and then it gives me there we go. Okay, blah blah. Two in the subject and all that, but I'm going to click in the field and then I'm going to press. There is a little microphone icon which you should all have. Well, my thoughts on the United States invading Venezuela are as follows. I think it's right. I think it's wrong. I read an article where a guy said it's going to end badly. I read another article that said it was a necessary action to take for national security. And what you're watching here is all this information build down the page. There we go. I think I have it captured now. And it just keeps going on and on and on. So I want you to learn how to do these verbal brain dumps based on some of the reading and material that you've covered. And especially like if you're in a dorm room or you're home, if you live at home, you can be doing this in a quiet spot while you're actually looking at the material so that it can generate this kind of information. I'm going to stop there, and you see all the material that I've generated. thus far. I've used this technique for years to help students generate drafts. And you'll be surprised how quickly you can get to 500 words, 700 words on a particular topic. Now, the real teaching here, I mean, right, we're just generating that language. The real teaching then is taking that language and grooming it. And I will show you how to break up your individual ideas and start to bring structure to the piece. I've got structure I'm going to cover here, which should help you, right? And I want you to generate this language yourself. We'll talk about AI, right? Large language models. You can have conversations with AI. And I'll talk about my policy separately from this. But I'm trying to show you how you can generate 3,500 to 4,000 words in a college course that are words that belong to you without trying to wrangle with AI. I mean, you can get AI to sort of spit something out for you, but is that your writing? It's not. It's actually plagiarized writing, right? Because it's actually right. It's a plagiarism machine. Um, and I want you to generate your own language, and I think we can facilitate that with our phones, and then I can provide structure and all those sorts of things. Okay. So then back to the kinds of essays that you're going to create for this class. We're going to turn toward the Atlantic magazine. It may be called the Atlantic Monthly. Still, it was many years ago. It's been around for a very long time, over 100 years. I will introduce this to you. You may be familiar, but what I'm fastened to here is the Atlantic style essay. Highlight this. In my view, is one of the most effective forms of writing in the world today. It is not a 4,000 word research paper. There's a place for that. I'm not going to do that in this class because in a research paper class with AI in the world, I would get a lot of students who just go to AI and say, I need 3,500 words, write my paper for me, and then they'll do some light editing and then submit that. I'm not going to play that game. I'm not going to try to figure out like some weird detective trying to figure out whether that was generated by AI. I'm going to instead appeal to your good nature, your goodwill, your honesty, and show you a way to generate this word count without just dumping a huge assignment on you. That's, if that takes place in other classes, that's fine, but that's not what I want to do here. So back to the Atlantic style essay. You have a free subscription, you've paid for it, right, to the magazine through Rohrbach Library, and there is the link. We will set this up in class, and you will start reading Atlantic essays. The essays also often have an audio component, so you can listen to them. Go for a walk and listen to it. Then open up your email and compose. I just listened to an article on blah blah blah, and it said da 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 da. And what will happen is you'll start to attract, as these topics come into your brain and into your heart. And I want you to write about the things that you're interested in. But once you start to pay attention to and focus on these topics as we discuss them, the information will start to come your way. It might be in your Instagram or your TikTok or whatever, and then the research that you do, and you'll start to develop some knowledge of it. And then we turn to our phones again. The phone, it's funny, I love that. Right. I think you're understanding what I'm saying. Now, what is the structure of the essay? Typically, if we look at these Atlantic essays, initially there is what's known as context. This is where you establish a starting point. Rhetorically, think of it as in the name of. A starting point can be a historical event. The US has invaded Venezuela. A news event, Ukraine. A comment by someone, the historical event, let me back up on that. It can be the Civil War. The news event, the US has invaded Venezuela. A comment by someone recently about something, a statement that has been issued. You can do another article, a body of research. You get the idea. I will help you with that. You need a starting point. Give us enough background then at the beginning so your discussion makes sense. Include a link or two to source material so that I understand where you're coming from. I resist calling this part an introduction because people too often equate that with flowery, often irrelevant language that most readers are tempted to skip. I see these on my phone, these long introductions. They're garbage. They just, it's like get to the point. And they want you to spend time on the page. So that's the game that's being played there. I'm going to push that aside and write tight in this class. That's not what we want. Instead, be precise. Leave me in a position, let me highlight this, where I can't afford to skip the opening. Incorporate brief quotes, learn how to quote briefly with single words and phrases rather than dumping long sentences. We'll talk about this in class. So you're getting things off the ground and you're saying, according to an essay or an article or some statement or some historical event where somebody said something or did something, this is what you're trying to bring into the mix. It's a very important skill to learn. It doesn't need to be long and difficult and arduous like you may have been taught in the past. But I'm hoping you agree that it's like, yeah, that's a good thing for me to learn, to be able to step into a professional meeting or situation and be able to establish context concisely, briefly, so that I know what I'm doing, right, in a focused way. That's context. Assertion is next. This is the nut graph. And in the professional writing world, it's known as the nut graph. It's like, what are you saying? This is the nut graph where you indicate precisely what you're trying to say. In draft form, this is often loose and imprecise, unless you have a lot of experience and can nail it on the first draw. Otherwise, be sure to get through the whole piece and see what your conclusions are, then bring those conclusions and assertions back to the nut. You see what I mean? Professional writers may be able to nail the nut right off the bat. They can write the introduction, write the context, the background, and then they can say, no, I'm trying to say this, because they already know, because they're practiced at it. Students struggle with that more. How do I know what I mean till I see what I say? So they need to work through the draft. And then what I see is at the end of the draft, students will say, I guess what I'm trying to say is this. That needs to be moved up in the piece. Okay. The example so far then. And when I lay these out here for you, please know, I mean, this is my disclaimer. When I adopt various positions, I am not saying that this is my position and that you need to subscribe to my position. Not at all. I know how, right? Education has gifted me the ability to see many perspectives on things. So when I make assertions, you'll see me. I'll talk about Democrats might say, Republicans might say, this group might say, this group might say. I'm trying to represent all of the arguments in this classroom as faithfully and accurately as I can. Okay. So far then, for the context part, the Trump administration has invaded Venezuela and arrested its president. You'll recall that I said you can begin with a news occurrence. I would put more there, right? I would add details of the date and what happened and Nicolas Maduro and all those kinds of things. But for our purposes right now, I'm establishing the context. My assertion is then this was a necessary step in terms of the interests of national security for the United States. So that's my position on this. Here's the news event. Here's my position. This had to happen. And then I would talk about why in the evidence section, which is coming next. Or, as you see here, I'm going to take the other position, the other side. This was an illegal action that could lead to much larger problems for the United States down the road. Go ahead and add the end there. You see? So that's what the assertion is, followed by evidence. Evidence is next. Bring together credible sources like an attorney in court, use the according to method, and get started according to an article in the New York Times, according to this person, according to that person. They are saying what? That the invasion of Venezuela and the arrest of the president is a great idea, is a bad idea. You're pulling at, and you can say it's mixed, it's unclear. You may argue that you can see both sides of this. It's up to you to develop. I want you to develop your positions on these. That's what college is about, right? Encountering these, what is happening in the world, and then working through your positions on them. Okay. We will discuss the idea of source credibility as we move through the semester. Typically then in most of these, let me just read it. Typically then credible balanced discussion, which is what we're striving for, considers the polar opposite position. Opponents will argue, detractors might say, the counter argument might be. So if I am saying that the U.S. needed to go into Venezuela and arrest Maduro, I might say Democrats will argue that this is extrajudicial or illegal, or will set a bad precedent, or will open the door for Russia to claim Ukraine and China to claim Taiwan. I'm representing the other side. Let me see what I have here now. Use those phrases. You have my permission. When I teach you, when I give you a way to introduce material like the according to method, use it. Don't try to come up with something new and creative. Use it. It's not plagiarism. I'm giving you my permission. And this is not like my own personal research. These are just techniques. These are just notes that you're playing on your horn or your saxophone, right? Okay. So use these. Opponents will argue, detractors might say. I want to see these in your writing. Then you refute the counter argument and head toward the close. So I'll give you more on this in a moment. Let me get to the close. This is where you restate your position concisely. This is a skill you must develop as a college-educated person to be able to close your argument. It's typically done thusly. Briefly reiterate the points, hit the high points that you've already made, and drive them home. You can list them. You can say, so this is a terrible idea because it's a terrible idea to go into Venezuela because I don't know, Afghanistan, right? Vietnam and Iraq. I mean, those are three huge examples right there that you just want to drive home at the end. So it's more of the same. It's more of the, sort of stupidity and nonsense and blood for oil and all those kinds of arguments that we can make in class. Or you can, oh, sorry, I touched the wrong key there. I'll come back to it. Here. Yep. Or you can reiterate one of the major points and drive it home. Maybe there's a big thing looming and you've made 4 or 5 points above. You say, this is the big one. It will lead to more death, destruction, money, whatever. It is also, you also have the option to point forward. So if this continues, we will be left with more death and destruction, right? You're getting my point. Change must occur swiftly because, so you can point to the future. You've talked about these things now in your essay. You're going to point to the future. Where are we heading? And what will be the consequences of that? Quotes are often helpful in the close. Let me highlight this. For example, the invocation of a well-known thought leader, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, Mahatma Gandhi, Jesus Christ. Somebody you can bring in, for American intervention overseas, there's any number of examples that once you start to do the research, you'll be able to find a general or a president or Ronald Reagan. I don't know. It's you've got to start to scratch the surface and see what's out there. But that is another strategy that I can put out there for you. Now, these are not comprehensive, but it's guidance. Here's the complete example, and I'll go ahead and put this on a separate page. Context. Trump administration has invaded Venezuela and arrested its president. My assertion then is one of the two. This was necessary or this was illegal. The evidence then, source one, claims that Russia and Iran were gaining a foothold, so something had to be done. And then more along those lines to back my position that this was a legitimate and necessary move. Or source one claims that the U.S. has tried this before countless times in Vietnam, Afghanistan, what did I say? Iraq, right? And Iraq. And it not only cost billions of dollars, it also caused millions of deaths. And then you have another source that backs that up and another source that backs that up. 3 is a magic number in writing, so that's what I would be striving for. 3 sources there. You will use embedded citations. So what that means is if I am, let's see, I'm going to go here and Russia. We like Wikipedia for Russia. Wikipedia is very good for biography and historical things, basic factual information. I know I don't know where you're at in terms of your opinion on Wikipedia, but when it first came out, the academic community didn't like it, and I have always been a supporter because I knew it was going to evolve into something. So let me show you then here, and what did I have? Russia. This is how you do an embedded link. You'll see that I just copied the URL, and then I go here, and I'm in Word, so I'm going to go ahead and click link. And then right down here, the address is this. I'll show you how to do this in Google Docs as well. It's simple. And one of the things that we'll need to make sure that we do in Google Docs is the link should open into a new tab. I think it automatically does that here with my settings. So that's how you do an embedded link. You will be doing embedded links. All right, where am I at then? That's that. So we've done the evidence. Now you move into the counter argument. Democrats argue that the U.S. does not have the right to intervene in the affairs of a sovereign country. It is better to take the diplomatic route. Republicans argue that decisive action must be taken. Diplomacy has been tried. It has not worked. So you're presenting that counter argument. We're almost there. The close then. Democrats will argue that the U.S. does not have the right to intervene in the affairs of a sovereign country, but that argument has merit. But there comes a time when the threat to the U.S. becomes so great that decisive action must be taken. So you see, I'm sort of weaving things together at the end. And Republicans argue that decisive military action must be taken, but actions must be through diplomacy and sanctions, not military force. And I talked about closing with, a quote from right, a quote from Abraham Lincoln, or he'll be my famous example, or someone else, right? And at this time, I'm at the end, and it's all I'm it's very difficult for me to know where you're going to be with your research and be able to point precisely to, oh yeah, use that thing. This is when you come to the negotiation. You negotiate your work with me in class. You complete the graphs, and we'll look at them on the big screen. I'll show you all of that. Okay, that's it for today. I know negotiation spelled wrong is probably bugging some of you, so I'll let it go. I'll take us back up to the beginning. That's what I have to say about essential writings. My share. Come back to this. Let's stop the recording. Thanks. Talk soon.